So the catalyst then. So with the catalyst, I was kind of thinking for quite a while on how this would work. As I know what I wanted to happen, it was just how do I get him. And it took me a while to think of it. It's a simple thing, so I'm surprised it took me so long. But I thought, what's the best way? Some issues. That's exactly what I did. When I kind of came up with the first ideas, thinking about the catalyst, I kind of went back to a kind of prelude and predominantly blood plague. So with the catalyst then, so as the city, thousands tears tip well as the children. Okay. So where I wanted to get to, which you'll find out very, very shortly, wanted something big, monumental that he's going to essentially tip him over the edge. I thought, well, what better way to do that? You know, this is a guy who family is extremely important to him. You know, his wife and his kid, his entire world. So if you want to make up dissolution of a government, switch to a different, you kind of need something big to be the catalyst. So I went there to put it. So the queen and her children, they did catch the plague. King had already set his best, I'm going to call them physicians, to. Okay. Now the reason I'm going to call them physicians is because they're not necessarily well, it's a group of doctors coupled with a group of alchemists and a group of so you know you've got pharmacists, you've got healers, that kind of thing, working on this one task. So he's put his very best men that are in the city onto this. That also includes his own personal physician, who, point of what is going to happen, has been his personal physician since he was a young child. So I would say there's about 30 years difference. So that this his personal physician would be in his late 70s, early 80s, mid 70s to 80s. So he's getting on in his years. Been with the king a very long time. He's seen, even though he's his personal doctor, I think he'd only be there for medical stuff, but because of how long in part of each other's lives, they actually become a trusted friend. That plays a very big part to come. So he'd already set his best physicians on to finding a cure for the plague. After a few more, actually no, days more, children civ. Scroll down, see what I'm typing. So they'd definitely become progressively worse. Expect deaths of the tipped tip cottage. Tyrannical. Okay? So although it's very Iron Fist, it's very much for the good of the country. This king has now been thrust into a position where his entire world is slowly loading his very eyes. You know, to say this is a family that even if you go out and buy picture frames, I know this is a really weird tangent to go on. Go out and buy a picture frame, you've got that stock photo, and they always look really happy, like cheesy happy. That is this family. So very close. They are the hot couple. Social media was around, they'd be all over Facebook, Instagram, everything time. So it became very tyrannical. He spiraled to depression. Sounds um so he's spiraling deeper, getting into a really dark place, understandably so. Has tipped him over the edge. He's become very tyrannical. He's still got that whole "this is what I want, need it now, get it done" mentality. But he's now dialed that up to 11. Believed that the team working fast enough aspire to his family. Not going to go too far into that. Basically, and two positions. So now the two lead physicians are one of the really top doctors, if you will, came to the city a couple of years ago. The other was the personal physician that had been with him since he was a child. So I'm talking old, anything like that. This was the guy he went to. Became a very trusted personal friend. Now all of a sudden his world is slowly imploding and he thinks that everyone is conspiring against him as slowly within himself. And he ends up killing these two guys. The fact that his family is extremely ill, catalyst for the was about to happen at this point. Catalyst only gets worse. Yes, I'm about to go there. Time of positions to children sadly. So I know how brutal that makes me in the space of a 20-minute video. We're up to this point. I've single-handedly torn a city to sunder, killed thousands of people, made the queen and children ill, given my king, the king, crippling grief and depression, killed his family, and am now about to send him into a delirium. That's essentially where we're going with this. Again, to be able to make that switch, you need something big. The fact of, I don't want to be king anymore, you deal with it, can work, except with this one, it's heirs. So the crown would have passed to his children. I'm not going too much into this family because it's part of history. I can tell you is one of those three children have taken over the crown. It's just the type of people they were. Not for any sort of gain or anything. They would have taken over the crown. So I needed something a bit bigger, and that's why I came up with this idea. As I say, it needs to be big, it needs to be dreadful. It's to seriously lead to the destruction of the crown, basically. So that's the catalyst. So we're now at a point. Catalyst has happened. Now have a cure. Now we move on to the next part, which is where the combat to it. This is where you see. This is where you see how bad on this guy. Okay. So now got the cure. So the cure has been found. To create. During this time, positions to distribute. Okay. Now, one thing you've got to factor into this, okay, is what's happening here is happening over a couple of days. Now, bear in mind that it's taken a couple of days for them to even find the key, and then they've got to make it. Now, all of a sudden, they've got to make enough to cure 600,000 people. No, not quite that much. About 300,000 people. Now, got to make doses for that many. Going to take time to make. So, if you're thinking with a sound mind, it's going to take time to make that. Also, got to think as well. Society like this, of lack of medicine, that it's going to take time to create this cure. But Chiron is in such depths of sorrow, and understandably so because of what happened to him, that he's now like, you're not doing it quick enough. You know, I've lost my family. There are people out there who's losing their family. You need to get this out quicker. And that is all that's racking in his head. However, and it's past. I'm talking days. Past to the guard captains. Be multiple because you've got to think this is a big city. Yeah, guard captains to go into the city, burn it to the ground. So is that pure enough city then it's to be so to burn city. I've done this guy so dirty it's unbelievable, and this is definitely some drastic shit. Yeah, essentially he hits a point in it's like go and burn it to the ground. We need rid of this disease. The cure's not being made fast enough. Burn it to the ground. And obviously, these 6 captains are stood in front of this guy who is, might I add, this is late at night and he is still armoured up. He's armoured up and weaponed up. Now, you're stood in front of your king around 5 other guard captains. You're being told to go and burn that city to the ground. And if it's me, personally, I'd probably rather let the king. Again, you don't know how you'd really in that situation. But when you are literally staring down the Mad King who is telling you to burn your home, these guys just went and did that, or their lives, or their family's lives, whatever. They went and did it. City burnt. So to see reason. Uh, Spire. Tears. The king. Okay. So these guys knew what he'd done, found out for some various way, and actually quite rightly so, realised that he was the sane for deciding this course of action, and tried to beg him to see reason. He didn't, so they killed him. Which also means that now, doing so, there is nobody to lead that city, that king. There are no heirs. There's no one at this point solid claim to the throne. So realistically, as the king died, so did the monarchy. At this point, it is a free. of any description at this point. Then to stop city. I don't think that should be saying, but anyway, source. So check him out. The sorcerers jumped into action, picking the sorcerers specifically because let's face it, we all know which of a maniacs they are. Sorcerers jumped into the action and sent city. Okay. So these guys did as they were. As I say, me personally would like to think that I would say no, rather die than hundreds of thousands of people. But again, you don't know how you'd act in the situation. But these guys followed the order. So they followed the order. Set fire to the city. King is killed. Those with responsible brains went out to try and stop them. Fortunately, the 50% of the city. So, extinguished. Take. So they did manage to get the cure made and distributed. Obviously, it was done a lot quicker because there is now a lot of people less that they now have to get around. Blood plague is eradicated. At this point, no to so the judges stepped to take this. Okay. Now, again, I just want to point out that although the mages have instantly gone, leave it to us, we'll sort it. They are under no circumstances corrupt. They are doing it out of good of the kingdom. They know something needs to be done, so they're doing it. So over the next few years, just set about tree to success. So it was supposed to be interim. Okay? So there was under no circumstances supposed to be these mages in power. The Magocracy that there is now is never supposed to happen. Supposed to happen is these would take over, sort the country out. Once the country was sorted, they would go and say, right, we now need a new king. Whatever. Let's get one elected. Who's the next best person to step into the crown? That's what was supposed to happen. However, in a surprise twist, Fowland they achieve such a short space time of me stay so requested a meeting between them between the reps of majors cities to sit down. Okay. So this is something that I was very, very, very keen on having. It's that, look, as magical people, we've stepped up and we have taken over the country, got it back to a place where we now stand back on our own 2 feet. Because you got to think, with the death of the king, the burning of half the city, the country descended into chaos. There was a definite economical depression because through half of that city, half of the workforce was gone. Half of it, with the blood plague, half of the trade had disappeared because they didn't want to go there in case that there was any plague or anything like that. So it had a massive knock-on effect. These mages that stepped up and created the court of mages got the country back to where it should be. It was then, as I say, supposed to go to an election where they would vote in their next king. Say, right, you're the next best thing. Let's get you coronated. But the people themselves said, look, being brutally honest, you've been in power for a few years now. You've done an all right job. Just you might as well stay in that seat. You've warmed it up. You might as well enjoy it now. You kind of get my meaning. But they said, look, we want you to stay in power, but would you please sit down with our town leaders, our city leaders, and come up with a formal agreement. Going to become a Magocracy, we need something in place that protects us as non-magical people. And that's what they did. So this is something I did think of before recording this video. So I am going to copy and paste some bits for this. So if you just give me a second. Keeps doing this. I don't know why. Simply. Okay, that's fine. In fact, I'm just going to do math. So I'm just going to put this so I can get to this. Sat down. Did Okay. So the Accords of Thrummel is going to be quite a key piece of information. Out. Okay. So I'm just going to point out that everything I'm about to put down now isn't the only things that were agreed. But one of the big things was helping out to help out crop growth. So obviously there is the ability to control weather, and the people knew that. It was like, now you're in power, you can kind of give us a bit of hand with this. There was a bit of back and forth, but the mages basically said, look, can't control the weather when at your beck and call. I mean, obviously we can, but we're not going to because there's still a natural order. We don't really want to piss off the druids. However, what we can do is we can agree to control weather 1 month of the year. Okay? So 1 month every year they will control the weather, which normally is right at the start of planting season. So that when the time comes to harvest, that first month of crops that have had the most optimal time to germinate as they can. Essentially what that was all about. So a new nobles. So this was a very controversial thing, but because of a majority rule by the people, even by the leaders of the villages and cities, because essentially they went out and said, look, what do you want? Take it to the meeting. That's basically what they did. And they said, we need a new order of nobles. Nobles that were there before, there's no monarchy, there were monarch nobles. It's not going to happen anymore. So a new order was created. So to account to be a noble, must go through university tuition. Now, Fowland is home to the academy university for magical tuition, basically. So that it's very, very big. So once you go through the university tuition, accepted as an assignment to serve Fowland Magocracy. A no. Goes to the bullet without any magic. Such a title expected to go settlements. Essentially what they're going to do. Bridges in construction. One of the key things with the construction is obviously the reconstruction of Thremel, which I'll touch on in a sec. Conservatorship spaces. Essentially, there is a lot of really nice areas in the countryside of Fowland, and they wanted to keep that, so that's a big thing. So with the construction, see, Thremel is the next to be constructed. Now, as I said right at the start of the video, it is built underneath floating mountain. And essentially, Major said, don't know why we're basically in the shadow of a huge mountain. Let's be a bit out there. Let's build our city on the mountain. That is what we did. And it was fine by the people, but wanted full access. So they did rebuild Thremel, they just rebuilt it 200 feet in the air, or quite a few hundred feet in the air, and said, look, we're still going to call it Thremel, that is the capital city, it has been for years, we're just rebuilding it pretty much in the same geographical location, it's just higher altitude. And the people were like, fine, that's fine, we want full access, we don't want it to be, you've now got your city, that's where you're going. We still want to be able to have full access and be a part of that capital city trading routes. That's exactly what they did. Okay. And trade routes is something I need to figure out, and airships is probably going to be something, but at the minute it's something I can't really. Couple of the bits to box off first, and then definitely airships. But that is essentially where I'm going to leave that article. We've still got quite a lot covered there. So we've got the prelude, we've got the catalyst, we've got what happened at Curiosity, 737 words. So we've got the prelude, we've got the catalyst, the conflict, the outcome and the aftermath. So we've got quite a bit covered there. So we now have all of the Fowland Monarchy, the rise of the Magocracy. And it's going to be really interesting when these guys will end up. Because these guys will end up going to Fowland at some point. Not quite sure when, but they will. Okay. And that is where I'm going to today's episode. On second thoughts, no, I'm not. So there was a little something I said right at the beginning of the video. I told you to stay around for a bit. I told you that you'd want to stick around for this. And you really, really do. If you're still here, you have about to get rewarded massively. So for the past couple of videos, I have banged on about how good World Anvil is. Hopefully you're beginning to see that. I put that much faith into World Anvil that I do myself pay a yearly subscription. Now the amazing people over at World Anvil, so that's Janet, Dimitri, all of the amazing World Anvil team, they are giving you guys, through me, a amazing discount off annual memberships only. So for being a viewer of my channel, you can now get an amazing 25% off any annual subscriptions to World. There's a whopping 25%. That's not 5, that's not 10, it's 25%. So there's a quarter of price off just because you watch my videos. What is that? So to be able to access that discount, you go onto World Anvil, when you go onto the subscription page and you select the yearly plan that you want, when it comes to checkout, you are going to put in this code. DOANDM22. Notice that is the initials of the channel, 22 on the end. That will unlock the 25% discount for you. I'd like to thank the amazing guys over at Ward Envil for giving this small channel the sponsorship. Thoroughly appreciate it. On that note, I am going to leave tonight's episode there. But I hope that you head over there and use that discount. See you in the next episode.